Hi, this is Pamela again, and I thought it might be good for me to talk about my testimony and how the Lord has worked in my life. Um, he's done so many great things, and He has just brought me from a pretty bad place in my life to where He's got me doing this now. And it's just amazing what the Lord can do if you allow Him. And I just want to start off and say that I've had an unusual life. I was adopted. I was given up for adoption when I was a baby, and I was in the foster care system for 7 years. I began to live with my parents when I was 7. And my parents were well into middle age when I was adopted. My mom, when I started living with my mom was 37, my dad was 46. And anyway, I have to say that I was not raised, my parents did not actively, church life was not something that was actively pursued. Um, in the beginning, I think my parents may have actively taken me to church. Um, I'm going to say between 6 and 10 times where they actively took me to church. Um, However, the Lord the Lord has been with me, and I can go back and talk about how the Lord, I feel, has been with me, and I have been His, even though I'm going to tell you a lot of my testimony has me, I'm going to talk about being in a backslidden state for quite a few years. But the Lord has always been with me, and I kind of feel like a lot of things that have happened, they have made me who I am today. Anyway, but the Lord put it in my heart. I found a church that was very close to our home, a little pretty big sized Baptist church in my neighborhood. I don't know how I started going there, but I used to go there to Sunday school, vacation Bible school, and I would get up and I would take myself. And I did this from the time I found it, I guess when I was 8, and I remember accepting the Lord when I was 8 years old, until I was in high school. I wanted to go to church, and I enjoyed it. I had friends there, kids who went in my high school. I would see them there, and I would go to the Sunday school, and I would go to a church service, and it was Baptist. And I remember being actively taught that. I just remember my Sunday school teacher saying that, we don't believe that speaking in tongues, if someone's speaking in tongues, it's demonic. I don't believe in the miracles. We don't believe in the miracles anymore because that was for the first century church, and we don't dance because of this, and whatever. You know how the Baptists are. So, but anyway, it served its purpose. I've always loved the Lord, even though like I said, I had a few years where I was lost. Um, and I'm gonna tell you why I got lost. Anyway, so became a young woman, got married, had small children. I was married to a military man, and we were stationed in Georgia for about 7 years. And we got involved in a nice church, spirit-filled church. And I remember when I got the gift of speaking in tongues, and the minister was standing up there, and it was nothing big and dramatic. People talk about how they got knocked over and all this other kind of stuff, and the minister just asked us, do you want the gift of speaking in tongues? And even though, strangely enough, even though I had been taught that it was demonic or whatever, I wanted it. And he just prayed for us, and he said, just begin to speak. And it started coming out. But anyway, so and apparently I enjoyed that church and serving. I taught Sunday school the time I was there. Now, something happened. The Lord was really, really working in me. And the Holy Spirit, I would go around my apartment doing whatever and speaking in tongues. And it got to a point where when I was speaking in tongues, I wasn't speaking anymore. It would come out as a song. And I mean, I was feeling it like it's strong deep down in my gut, strong and loud. It was coming out in a song, you know. And for some reason, I got annoyed with this. I got annoyed that my speaking in tongues was now this loud, strong song. And I was feeling it deep down, and it annoyed me. And I told I told the Holy Spirit that I didn't want it. And that was one of the biggest mistakes in my life, because when I made up my mind that I didn't want it to manifest, I think it totally went away or something. And it opened up the door for my life to make a terrible change. What happened also after that is I gradually stopped going to church. I became more and more discontent with my marriage. I started attending this particular church less and less. Eventually, um, it got to the point I went from Sunday school teacher filled with the Holy Spirit, singing in the Holy Spirit, to a few years later, living in a sinful relationship, having a child with somebody that I was not married to. I mean, it was totally downhill after that. It was, it was a mess. It was like I got to a point where I had totally forgotten about the Lord. I was doing things, and I look back at it and I'm thinking I didn't even think about the Lord. I did not think about, is this right or this wrong? And anyway, yeah, I went from going to church probably about 3 times a week, spending a lot of time with friends who were involved with church and having a great church family, I started really disconnecting myself more and more. And, I look back at it and I was really searching for and trying to find contentment. God had already given me the Holy Spirit, which definitely, is fulfilling and enough as itself in that relationship. And I was searching for this again, but I didn't have the understanding that I had rejected the thing that I was looking for. Um, anyway, like I was saying, I got involved with this guy, and I lived with him for 5 years. And I have to say that in my life, I had idols. My parents were an idol, my husband was an idol, and this guy was an idol. I was looking to them to give me what the Lord, in so many ways, had already given me, and only in it fulfill me in a way that only He could fulfill me. And anyway, so I wound up getting pregnant and giving birth to my son, my youngest son. And I read this book, and what the book said was, you need to get it together, girl. And believe it or not, up until that time, well into my 30s, I thought that I had to submit myself. You know, when you're married, you do submit yourself to your husband. But I felt like they had total control over me, that I could not make a determination about where my life was going. And that's why I say these people were idols. I was looking to them to help me or whatever, and it wasn't happening, you know. And I was so upset, you know, and I had forgotten about God. I forgot about that. He is where you find your fulfillment. The relationship with Him is where you find your guidance and your fulfillment in your love. But somehow through this book, I started remembering the Lord. And I asked the Lord to get me out of this relationship. I knew this guy was not going to marry me. I was miserable. It was a miserable, terrible relationship. And I asked the Lord to help me get out of it. And I wrote this list at this time. My son was newborn. And I wrote this list of things that needed to happen in the next year. And I gave it a year. And I remember I came back at that list a year later. And none of the things that were on that list had happened. And I knew it was time to go. And I'm going to tell you, when the Lord is working in your life, He is working in your life. When you allow Him to work, when you want to draw closer to Him, when you want to be walking in His will, He will lay it out for you. And that is what He did. He, you know, he helped me with a plan on how to go. And he really did all the work. I just kind of let Him work through me in so many ways, or let the circumstances roll out. All right. And the Lord set me up with a job. And He set me up with transportation. And this guy that I was with, he had no idea what was going on because he never really talked to me. And I just put a date in my mind that I was going to start working. And I knew that this guy would make my life miserable if he knew the plan. But the plan was between me and the Lord. I'm going to tell you, the Lord completely moved this guy out of my life. He completely moved him out and set up everything better than I ever could have. And that really, I mean, the Lord had been working in me during those 5 years I was with that guy. But when I really said, Lord, I really need you. I need you to help me. He came through in a big, big way that I would have never, ever imagined. And that's what He does. That's what the Lord does when you submit yourself to Him. So anyway, this was 2000, and this was 11 years ago. Wow. Anyway, I got to a point where, you know, I started going to church again, and I recommitted my life to the Lord. And then I started to, I'm going to say, 2009, I started having dreams. And I didn't understand what these dreams were about. And they were about me getting married. And it's funny because the day I started having the dreams about getting married, I had just broke up with a guy. Not this one, but years later, 7 years later, I was involved with someone. I thought we were going to get married. Anyway, and we wound up breaking up that Labor Day weekend. The very night we broke up, I started having dreams about me getting married. And I want to go ahead and do that, those dreams about being a bride. And I'll do those on my next video. But God bless you, and this is long. Have a great day.